Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today with Climate Caucus and Climate Reality Project Canada. My name is Alex Lidstone. I'm the network coordinator at Climate Caucus. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm calling in from the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina, and the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, as well as all other people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. So I'm going to start off with a bit of a Climate Caucus spiel, and then I'll tell you all what the agenda is for today, and then we can get into it. So Climate Caucus is a network of locally elected climate leaders across Canada. Our mandate is 1-10-0, which is one planet, 10 years, no one left behind. So we try and really incorporate biodiversity collapse and social justice along with our climate change mandate. And we aim to support our elected members through sort of three different pillars. The first one is really networking. So a lot of the time, locally elected climate leaders feel very alone in their journey. And so it's super helpful for them to sort of feel like they have the network of 360 other locally electeds across the country standing behind them. Secondly, we are a hive mind. So we like to provide lots of knowledge and information. We have a counselor's handbook, which I'd be happy to share with anybody, which is basically a long list of local initiatives that you can implement in your community. And we have working groups where we work on certain barriers or barriers to action that any locally electeds might be facing and try and solve those problems. We have students to help with research for that. And the final one is advocacy. So we help advocate to higher levels of government for any needs that our members are facing. So that's Climate Caucus. Everyone's welcome to join, and it's great to have you all here. So for our agenda today, we're going to start with Matthew giving a brief intro into Climate Reality Project Canada and climate hubs. Then Dean will discuss the 2020 standings of the National Climate League. And then we get to hear about the National Climate League from the perspectives of city staff and elected officials and also from citizens. So we'll finish with Dean wrapping up with a call to action, and we will have a Q&A. So I will pass it along to Matthew.
Thank you very much, Alex, and nice to be with you all. I just want to recognize that here in what is commonly known as Montreal, the Climate Reality Canada's offices are located on land which has long served as the site of meeting and exchange amongst Indigenous peoples, including the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations, and we honor and recognize that these nations have been the traditional stewards and continue to be the stewards of this land and the waters that that I am meeting with you on today. So quickly, what does the Climate Reality Project propose through the through the Climate Hub Initiative, and as part of the Climate Hub Initiative, the benchmarking aspect. So Climate Reality Canada is over 1,600 individuals 1,400 individuals here in Canada, over 31,000 worldwide who have been trained by Al Gore and have basically gone back into their communities with a network and with tools to make change. There have been 2 climate reality trainings in Canada where several hundred people were trained, and then 45 worldwide where there are several dozen trained at each of these trainings, the next one taking place later this year. In October, I believe, or September. Anyways, I'll be able to put a link in the chat shortly about that. As part of what we do in Canada to collaborate with each other once we finish this training is we put climate reality leaders, as they're known once they've taken this training, in touch with each other. So we encourage you to take the training. If there are citizens in your jurisdiction that are interested in climate issues and that want to become ambassadors, want to become leaders in their respective communities, to please send them to climatereality.ca. And then once they take that training, or if even before they've taken that training, they can get in touch with groups across the country that are working to decarbonize their municipalities. And one of the main ways that we support hubs is through our data collection initiative. So we do amplification through webinars and blogs. The next webinar is actually happening in a couple of minutes later this evening, with Quebec being featured. Blog posts featuring best practices, a toolkit that we pull together resources from across the internet, and we develop resources when we feel like there are not adequate resources available. And finally, I'm going to pass the baton off to Dean very shortly, but just to mention our network of regional organizers as well. So their role is to support you in and in your citizens in helping decarbonize their cities. And what that looks like is you've got a posse of climate advocates showing up month in, month out at municipal council meetings, able to expand the research capacity of your limited budgets and limited staff capacity. So these folks are able to step in and fill some of those gaps and help your city accelerate change, both socially and from a research perspective. So with that said, I will pass the baton off to Dean.
Great. Thanks so much, Matt, and thanks for having me here. I'm going to mainly talk today about the National Climate League, specifically the standings that released this year. So as Matt mentioned, my name is Dean, and I'm the National Campaign Manager at the Climate Reality Project Canada. My main role includes developing campaigns and projects that really help push climate solution initiatives forward across the country, and I help coordinate external campaigns with a variety of other environmental orgs throughout Canada. I'm also the lead commissioner for this year's iteration of the National Climate League standings, which will be the focus of my little spiel today. So we've released the National Climate League, or the NCL, now for the last 2 years, and its official third iteration just debuted on February 23rd. So at its core, I've been using this word every time I've talked about it. The NCL really is an exercise in participative democracy. It's a massive data collection project that is powered and spearheaded by our citizen-led community climate hubs that Matt just talked about. And when published, the NCL standings highlight local solutions that improve the lives of everyday Canadians and help set Canadian municipalities on the path to carbon neutrality by 2050. So how exactly does this all work? We here at the Climate Reality Project Canada have developed 15 primary indicators and 15 complementary indicators that are representative of living a better life in Canada. We cover a very broad range of topics, from things such as affordable housing to air quality, landfill waste to walkability, to just name a few. And although a lot of these indicators might not seem directly linked to lowered greenhouse gas emissions, they indirectly are. And when they perform well, Canadians tend to be happier and better off. So to quantify these positive impacts and to use our famous hashtag #MeasureWhatMatters across cities, we chose these indicators based on 5 criteria: accessibility, comparability across cities, the ability of municipal governments to act, their impact on GHG emissions, and whether or not the average citizen actually cares about this particular indicator improving. So how does this work, and what makes this exactly a citizen-led project? And how can we get everyone here involved? So when we launch the data collection season for the standings, which is usually around June or July of every year, we ask everyday citizens to engage with their local elected officials within their municipalities, ask them to provide data to them on those 15 key indicators and 15 complementary indicators that we've established. On our end, we provide them with tools such as templates, be it email or talking points, that way Canadians can feel comfortable either calling, going in person, or emailing their local representatives. Each indicator was created using a different methodology. For example, for our affordable housing indicator, we asked for the average monthly rental price as calculated by the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. A lot of this data is actually quite easily available online, but we also urge people to reach out to their elected officials to look for that harder to find data. So So the standings also function as a sort of contest. So for example, this year, Calgary led the way in our bike lane indicators. The standings then explain the policies that are in place that allowed their municipality to thrive in that indicator and can hopefully inspire other municipalities that aren't doing so great to improve. So to sum up, the goal of the NCL is 1, to instill a sense of agency and community through citizen engagement and participatory democracy, and 2, draw on diverse constituencies to demand transparent accountability from their municipality. So, as I mentioned, this year's standings were officially released on February 23rd, and so far they've been met with great enthusiasm. We're super excited to be able to share them with everyone on this call and the general public. I'll post necessary links in the chat, but you can access these standings by going to our dedicated landing page at climatereality.ca/NCL. At this landing page, you can find the link to download the 2020 NCL standings, as well as the slew of resources that we have available on how you can use the NCL to make change in your community. We ask you to be able to share the landing page and the NCL itself throughout your community and your network. We want to make sure we have as much visibility as possible for this year's iteration. On top of that, for this year's NCL, we've also collaborated with McGill University to develop a podcast highlighting conversations between our volunteers on the ground and an academic who specializes in a specific field. Currently, our podcast on electric vehicles is up on our landing page. Please check it out. And within the next few weeks, we should be having another podcast on walkability coming soon. Lastly, we want you and people around you to be able to get involved in helping us develop next year's iteration of the standings. There are multiple ways for you and everyday Canadians to get involved. If you're interested in becoming a part of our dedicated data collection team, we are recruiting. Our data collection team will be responsible for collecting all the relevant data in their own region, specifically the cities that they're working in. We're hoping to get together a team of 20 or so dedicated individuals, be it from everyday Canadians or elected officials, who will make sure we get even some of that really hard to find data. This is all volunteer based, and we'll probably have some info sessions and workshops down the line on how you can help us out with the data collection process. We also want to be able to develop a dedicated research and policy team for the next iteration of the standings. Every year, these standings highlight local policies that either foster or hinder certain cities in the indicators we're looking into. It's really tough for just a few of us on the Climate Reality team to keep track of every single policy initiative going on in each Canadian city, so this is also where we could use your help. If understanding or working in the ins and outs of municipal climate policy is something you're interested in and something you'd like to contribute to next year's NCL, we're also recruiting volunteers for that. So those are really the few calls to action that we have for next year's iteration, and we hope that you share this within your community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dean. Okay, so with that, I'll leave this on the screen for just a moment. Oops, pardon me. I guess I won't. With that, I'd like to introduce Dominika Sekula. She is a citizen of Brampton and also a staff member of the region of Peel. She participated in the National Climate League standings with a citizen hat on, but with the knowledge of what it takes from a municipal official's perspective to go and find this data. So I would like to introduce Dominika to you and allow her to share some of her experiences with the initiative.
Hi, everybody. So as Matt mentioned, I work for a regional municipality, which is a higher tier municipality. And the data that we're collecting, most of it is actually at the lower municipality level. But I did speak with staff from both levels. And of course, I kind of do a similar job. I work in public works, so I also deal with environmental impact data. So I can speak from that perspective. I had some resistance encountered, and I can understand why for sure. So from the staff perspective, first of all, I want to say that everybody is different, but in general, I think that we are struggling with two opposing forces or attitudes. On the one hand, we produce a lot of reports, which sometimes feels like they just check the box and nobody actually reads it, even though we think it's important and we care about the work that goes into it. But sometimes it feels like we write the report and there's nothing else. So we have a love of sharing the data that goes into it. But on the other hand, there are quite a few reports that we do as a staff. So taking on another reporting responsibility can be a big deal. So we know resources have to be committed ahead of time. When I spoke with my municipality, I did get that pushback that in order to get them to report it, I would just have to go through council. They didn't really want to talk to me. So that's why I'm so excited to participate in this session to talk to the elected officials, because I know that that's kind of a longer road. And I do want to tell you why I'm excited about the NCL, because I work in a particular area of environmental management, but I want to have a larger impact as a resident. And a lot of the time, the work is done by staff, it's done by council. What can the residents do? Well, I was pointed to a lot of open data that the city and the region shares in open data formats, or they produce certain reports. Other staff members produce reports that they feel nobody reads, but I actually read them. So I was able myself to engage with the data, get a lot of that, have my hands on it and then compare with other municipalities. And that's why I do like this NCL reporting structure, this initiative, even though there are so many climate reporting initiatives, but this one, the residents themselves can get quite a lot of the data. I was able to get really like maybe 80–90% of what was required. So that's the strength in it for me. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Dominika. Perhaps you could speak to once you have the document in front of you as a city staff member, how does that equip you to advocate for increased funding, for example, for something that you think is a priority?
That's a great question. I work in compliance, so it's a little bit different maybe, but a lot of times, if there isn't an external pressure for us to do something, then our hands are tied a little bit. Sometimes you're only required to do what you're required to do, just like maintain the status quo. So if I either get resident complaints or by some miracle, a councilman or person gives us some pressure, it's a lot of influence. Then we have so much more leverage, honestly, to do the work. And that would be the same. Like I don't see a lot of pressure in my area, which is wastewater quality and water quality. We don't get a lot of pressure from the public, and that would help us accomplish better things. Because I'm right now the only pressure is to maintain status quo, to meet all the limits from the government. There isn't a lot of pressure to exceed. If I had more from the public, if this was a livelier, more well-known issue in my area, we could do so much better, because we just don't have the pressure.
Thank you. That's very helpful to hear that. That's gonna be one of the tweets from this event. We just don't have the pressure. It's perfect. And I'll be asking you questions now that I know a little bit more about your specialty. I'll be asking you questions about ozonization soon. All right. Thank you very much, Dominika, for joining us. I'd like now to introduce Jessica McIlroy, City Councillor for the City of North Vancouver, and the City of North Vancouver, and her experience in what it takes for citizens to turn data into action. So thank you very much, Jessica, for joining us.
Hi, and thank you for having me. Joining from the City of North Vancouver on the ancestral and traditional territory of the Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh people. And so I'm going to just provide a few comments on sort of my view and putting my elected official hat on, thinking of data and the NCL and the standings, and the value that it brings for me as an elected official and for others in trying to move forward on the climate action items that are of interest to me. And as Matthew stated, there is the importance and tremendous value that comes from it being something that is resident and community led and supported. And so having that level of support for what I'm trying to move forward and see that our community members are on board and behind us and want to take these measures and actions. Overall, having data is always a very important part of sort of justifying and backing up any of the policy decisions that we make. I will say that I'm guilty of sometimes just trying to throw things at the wall and see if they stick because it matters to me and I find it's important. But for something like climate, not all of my council members are necessarily in the same headspace as I am and having the same thoughts or values that I have. So having that ability to actually have something that helps with the evidence-based decision making and showing that this is something we actually need to address and there's data behind it and reasons for it to move forward, then really adds some weight to those decisions. The other piece of the NCL, and I think also what Alex sort of spoke to is also the value of the Climate Caucus is that connection with what's happening across the country and what's happening in other places. So there's a demonstration of what's possible. And there's an idea of where there's leadership and thoughts of where we could do more and helping pull each other along because we need to be bold and we need to do big things. And sometimes we are very busy with our heads down in our communities and not looking across of what other people are doing in other places, and what we could be doing that's going to bring us forward. Another piece is being able to track our progress. So any type of benchmarking and data collection really helps us understand if we're making steps in the right direction. And it can be really hard for local government because we don't have a lot of tools to require benchmarking and require data in different places where we need it, or even have access to the data that we need. So anything that helps us show progress or show lack of progress and understand if we're making the right steps and making the right decisions to keep us moving forward. So those, I think, overall are where there's really some really interesting value from an elected official's perspective on where something like the NCL can be another piece of how we're tracking progress. We're coming together across the country and really demonstrating to other levels of government the tremendous things that are happening at our local level of government. I don't know if you've got any quick questions for me, Matthew.
I've got one, certainly, and we'll definitely open it up as well in a moment. But the question that comes to mind is, because from personal experience, that I've been able to tell a pretty big difference between me as a citizen arriving at City Hall with a demand and me as a citizen arriving at City Hall with a demand and a solution. And the difference is I can hold up a document and I can say, hey, look, we're moving half as fast as the next city. They've reduced by 15%. We've done 5%. You know, that allows me to say, what are they doing here in this document? I can see that they've implemented such and such, this other solution. Can we not, as a city, invite a speaker from that other municipality to give a talk to our city engineers, to give a talk to our planning department? Can you speak to best practices and worst practices in government relations? If folks are going to be, if councillors want to encourage their citizens to be impactful in the way that they engage, can you maybe just speak to that, like the gap between and your role in nudging citizens to be more robust, more research focused in their advocacy?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting point, and you, I think you kind of spoke to it of coming to us with solutions, but not necessarily having sort of a fully baked idea of this is exactly what I want you to do. But there's a big difference with communicating that this is really important and we really want something to happen. And yes, here are places where it's been done and ideas of what we could do. And in that sort of very open, like hoping for a dialogue and a discussion. And I think where people sometimes not make a mistake, but approach things a bit a way that might be less effective is either being sort of too harsh in coming in and a demanding kind of action on a certain item for with a very specific solution, and it's got to be this way, and why aren't we doing this exactly? And then it creates a situation where the elected official or person that you're communicating with is not feeling like there's an opportunity for just dialogue and finding solutions and opening up a conversation. And I think we've been told many times over the years by different levels of government and industry that things just we're not quite there yet in a lot of the solutions that we're trying to implement. And we're told that either the technology is not far along or things are still too expensive. And so having these examples of best practices or things that have happened in other jurisdictions allows us to at least approach the conversation in a bit more open way. But having our community members come forward with just that desire to at least open up the conversation, open up things and look at things a bit more carefully and start to find solutions that work for our jurisdiction, understanding that every local government has its own constraints and own things that it needs to work within and bounds that it's trying to work within, that not everything is necessarily going to be implemented in the exact same way and across all the different places. But having that
So I think it might be Jessica that's frozen. Is that my understanding? Okay. All right. So I think she was coming close to the end of that thought there. And I will now, thank you, Jessica. Sorry, you're unfrozen now. Would you like to restate the last sentence or two?
Oh no, did I freeze? Sorry, I didn't realize I froze. I'm sorry.
No.
Now I've forgotten what I said.
So yeah, important to recognize the differences and the distinctions, between municipalities, and not being, it's not a one size fits all thing. We're not saying this solution works everywhere, let's copy paste. But yeah, very much appreciate that perspective as well. And yeah, you'll hear that across the country. You'll hear that across the city. Oh, they live on the other side of the tracks. Things are different over there. So it's very much a from the ground up kind of solution. We want participative democracy with people advocating for the solution that's right for their neighborhood, for their street, for their community. And so that's brings me to the last portion of the, so thank you very much, Jessica, for joining us. And we'll move to questions in a moment with the broader public. However, I'll take the microphone to share a little bit of the citizen experience. Yes, I am a member of Climate Reality Project Canada and was previously, initially a member of the Montreal Climate Coalition, who for many years has advocated for a carbon budget in Montreal, has advocated for climate tests, life cycle analyses, better emissions inventories, and more frequent or more timely rather, and deeper public participation. So one of the case studies of a citizen taking this to City Hall that I'd like to highlight from the Montreal experience is a meeting that we were able to secure with the entire caucus of the official opposition of Montreal, which tend to be the kind of more suburban mayors. There are 19 borough mayors in Montreal. So most of these mayors and their councillors in their respective boroughs are they're not getting the climate message from their citizens. They want to do, their part. However, it's not politically easy for them because of the demographics of their communities not being as climate friendly or climate ambitious, let's put it that way. So what we were able to do with the, as using the National Climate League standings as a starting point to enter that conversation, it allows us to then go into a meeting with several dozen elected officials at the same time. We took about an hour and a half with them, and we made a number of recommendations, invitations, let's call them, one of which being download the standings, get to know them, share them in your respective boroughs, so that citizens become aware that, oh, hey, reducing emissions also means better air quality. Reducing emissions also means lower energy bills. Reducing emissions also means green space and healthier streets, safer streets for cycling and pedestrians. So all of a sudden, they're seeing the correlation between co-benefits and climate action. So I'll share these 8 invitations with you, translating them quickly. So the first invitation was to discuss solutions with your local environmental organizations. Frequently, elected officials don't necessarily take the time to reach out to say, who's the organization who leads public thinking on this critical issue? I'm going to set an appointment and make time to meet with those experts working at that organization. Frequently, these organizations interface with the elected officials through public consultations. However, it's a great idea to develop those relationships, to get those people on speed dial, to be able to rely on their expertise. So if you haven't done that, highly recommend that you build that network. You get to know those people in our community. The Conseil Régional en Environnement de Montréal is the kind of the environmental authority that touches on a number of municipal issues. The second one for which the second invitation that was sent to these elected officials that I will share with you is to attend a climate reality training. So the link is in the chat right here now, but you can also go to our website, climatereality.ca, and you'll find an option to attend one of the future trainings. The next one is going to be in the late summer, early fall of this year. So you can check that out. And it's a wonderful opportunity to deepen your knowledge and your network around climate issues. The third invitation is to join the Climate Caucus. So this was right near the outset of the Climate Caucus at its inception a couple of years ago. And yeah, we shared that invitation with them. So many of you are already members of the Climate Caucus. The fourth invitation was to download the position paper to unify our voices collectively at the federal level. How can municipal officials have more power when they put their voices together, lobbying for change at the FCM, reallocation of funds, things like that. So we participate in the Climate Action Network Canada's Cities Caucus, and the position paper describes the key recommendations that we encourage advocacy organizations and elected officials to rally around and take their voices collectively to their local MPs to request policy changes at the federal level. The fifth invitation was to partner with local enterprises, small businesses that want to do good for their communities. This is a co-op that focuses on life cycle analysis. So get to know your networks. This is just a second invitation to get to know another part of your local network. So yes, the NGO network, but also the entrepreneurial network in your city. Ecotech Canada, or Canada Ecotech, is a great starting point for a whole long list of organizations that work in this space, that work on renewable energy, that work on technologies and business models that seek to address the climate and ecological crises. The sixth invitation was to sign the Montreal Climate Coalition's declaration supporting decarbonization for our 400th anniversary in 2042. So that would be eight years sooner than the current target of the City of Montreal. And that outlines also demands around a carbon budget, the application of a carbon budget, and a climate test and GHG inventories that go along with it that are necessary to make it functional. And lastly, and most importantly, I believe, the public participation piece. Without broad public participation, we will not achieve climate justice. We will not achieve intersectional progress. We're going to fix one problem while leaving a whole bunch of other problems unresolved. So the fourth, or the first, actually, the way it's formulated, recommendation of that declaration is, in fact, to deepen public participation and give people an opportunity to engage in their democracy. And there are all sorts of ways to do that that would encourage populations that don't typically or historically participate. Jury duty, type of situations have been brought up, and there's a whole bunch of others as well. The second last invitation is to invite a climate reality speaker. We have a large network of 1,400 speakers. You want someone to present on an issue to your standing committee, for example, on waste management or autonomous vehicles or whatever the case may be. We almost certainly have somebody who is on the cutting edge of those issues. These are people that have taken several days out of their lives. Many of them are high-level professionals with expertise that can share that with your city. And in the context of COVID and a pandemic, it becomes very easy to say, oh, this person is based across the country. It becomes possible to invite that person quite easily to intervene and share their solutions with you. So that's another invitation that I'd like to share with you today. And finally, get to know your local climate scientists, because one of the biggest stumbling blocks for local climate action is the seed of doubt. People saying that, oh, who are these people anyways telling us what to do? Get to know them. They are all over the country. We have terrific researchers, and I would highly recommend looking at Sustainable Dialogues Canada.ca, I believe is the web address, and getting in touch with a local sustainability researcher or a local IPCC author to better share with your community the human face of the research that's happening, because frequently we look past that and we see numbers and graphs, but we don't see the families that are behind that, and somebody, a nice person trying to make, a difference in the world. So really, that's the last invitation that I'll share with you on that front. I took a little bit longer than I expected to for this section, so I apologize, but we do have ample time for exchange. Although before we do, there's one last part of the call to action that Dean is going to share with us as well through the National Climate League. And so I'll reshare that last slide that I shared earlier, Dean.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, I mentioned mainly the calls to action sort of already, the ways you could get involved. But yeah, those 3 points on that slide would be the 3 main ways moving forward to get involved. And I know Dominika already sent me an email wanting to get involved for the data collection for next year, which is super great. I'm happy to see the enthusiasm. So yeah, one way to do it is join a climate hub to help your city decarbonize at climatehub.ca. 2, so visit our landing page at climatereality.ca/NCL to download this year's standings, take a read of them, share them within your network, your community, whoever it is that you might know. And I put the links for the French landing page and the English landing page in the chat box as well. And then lastly, you could contact me at devangelioU@climatereality.ca to get involved in any of those initiatives that for next year. So be it data collection, be it the policy team, whatever it might be, we need help. We need people on the ground that are willing to help contribute to this great cause. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Dean. I will just slip in one final call to action, which is a little bit more timely. It is this evening. There's a presentation happening, and I just posted the link in the chat, but you can also find out from our social media channels, a presentation about Quebec. This is part of a larger series of webinars given by some of our all-star presenters, so people who've been doing this many, many, many times and are willing to share their kind of best practices in presenting the challenges, the crisis, and its solutions with respect to the regions of Canada. So we had an Atlantic webinar last month. This month focused on Quebec, moving westward towards BC over the course of the year. And we look forward to having you join us on those webinars. You can also check them out on our website subsequently or on our YouTube channel, Climate Reality Canada. So with that, I'm going to close out the recording and move into the Q&A session. And so